What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Ya ibadi, addressing the servants. Now, the term ibad, generally the term ibad, it means servants. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ibadi, O my servants, what does this entail? Many people, they have a concept that ibad refers to slavery, like the type of slavery that occurred with the Africans in America, where the person loses his free will. What does this mean when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ibadi? This address to the servants is endearment, a tahabbub, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this with love. Meaning, ibadi, why are the believers, meaning if you study Al-Quran Al-Kareem, you will realize that the people who are referred to as ibadullah in the Quran, in the worldly life, are the believers. But in the akhirah, both believers and disbelievers are referred to as ibad. Why? Because in the worldly life, the believer is a servant and obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by choice. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him with a free will, and yet he chooses to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that there is no compulsion in the worldly life. He is not compelled to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the worldly life. He chooses to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the worldly life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ibadi, O my servants, meaning those in the worldly life who choose to follow me, who choose to obey me. But why would they follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because they recognize the divine favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their life. The very fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them life, intellect and freedom of choice is sufficient for them to acknowledge this and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning the favor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us of life, freedom and intellect outweighs anything else. This favor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has conferred upon us makes us realize regarding what is referred to as ubudiyah. What is ubudiyah? Our innate servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This ubudiyah, even if a disbeliever does not acknowledge the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him, and does not acknowledge that there is someone who overlooks his affairs, the disbeliever, even though he does not acknowledge this, yet he will always be subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without realizing. I mean, for instance, the immune system alone. If the immune system was removed, a person would be firstly admitted into an hospital and placed on his deathbed, simply because the immune system has stopped working. But the kafir and the believer, the difference between a kafir and a believer is a believer, a mu'min, does not observe the asbab, the worldly means which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, but he observes the creator of those asbab. He observes the one who created the worldly life and everything around it. When he observes the one who created the asbab, he does not rely on the asbab. He relies on the creator of the asbab to create those asbab. Asbab meaning the means, the ease and facilitation of something. It does not mean he abandons the asbab. It means he relies on the creator of the asbab. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ibadi, there is a deeper meaning in that Ya ibadi, those of you who acknowledge your innate neediness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the first thing every believer must learn, that they have an innate neediness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. whether they are in recognition of this fact, they are cognizant of this fact, or whether they are negligent of this fact. And that is the difference between a believer who acknowledges this with his heart, acknowledges this with his mind, and then a Muslim, one who submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A Muslim acts upon his ubudiyyah, his servitude. And the person who reaches maqam al-ihsan, the state of perfection, he observes this with his heart at all times.